When Hasbro announced through their Haslab program they would be working on Jabba's Sail Barge as compatible with the 3 and 3/4 Star Wars action figure line, fans were excited. Because, well, this was a vehicle that had a lot of screen time and was set to be the largest vehicle ever made for the action figure line, and we waited patiently, watching as it went from a gray model to a fully painted model to the fact that fans supported it and were actually able to hit the minimum number of backers. It was a very fan-involved project, and one of the things fans were excited was filling their sail barge. And of course, we all know what everyone wants to fill their sail barge with, and that's yummy, delicious sushi. But the problem was a lot of fans couldn't actually find sushi to fill their sail barge with because there really wasn't that much sushi available at market that fit with the sail barge. Okay, I'm totally kidding. People didn't want to fill it with sushi, but doesn't that look awesome? I mean, talk about like a sushi boat. Okay, what I'm actually talking about filling the sail barge with, of course, is yummy, delicious action figures, not to be confused with sushi. Don't eat them. But a lot of folks might not have all the characters, and that was sort of the flaw with the whole sail barge project. We saw in all of their cross-sell images lots of shots of different sail barge villains, aliens, Jabba, palace characters, etc., interacting with the sail barge, showing off all the places that they could be, but with many fans not owning all these characters, they were left with filling in the sail barge with random Cantina aliens or G.I. Joes or whatever they had. The only characters that actually came with the barge was, of course, Yak Face and Jabba the Hutt, which didn't really fill up the barge. Having all of the necessary characters really meant you'd been collecting for years, because while there have been a ton of action figures created that would work for the sail barge, none of them were available at the time the sail barge was created or shipped. In fact, the only thing that came close was an Entertainment Earth 3-pack of kit-bashed and re-released figures that had already been to market. So getting a full Jabba Palace Sail Barge crew, shall we say, or however you want to put it, was frustrating. A lot of fans, of course, were also leaning on their vintage Kenner line from the 80s, but again, didn't quite fill out the sail barge, and these figures had been shipping over the course of many years and many different, I guess you could say, lines. Star Wars hasn't just been one consistent line. It's gone through many, many different iterations over the years, from Power of the Force to Saga series to the Vintage Collection. And because the figures had been released over 30 plus years, you couldn't just go to your local toy store and purchase a whole bunch of Jabba aliens to fill your sail barge out. Unless you had been ahead of this, you wound up with a sail barge that was looking a lot less full than fans expected. So why was this? Why was Hasbro able to say, oh, well, you could fit 181 characters in this sail barge, but do we even own 181 figures? Let alone a small handful that would actually be accurate to the barge weren't available at retail. And it was frustrating seeing things like all of the inset shots on the box with characters popping out of, trapdoors and manning all the weapons, etc., but they weren't available at retail. You couldn't just go buy these characters to fill your barge out with, even though they're seen in all of the cross-sells. This led to a lot of frustration of fans asking, well, why can't we have figures re-released? And that is part of the whole new figure concept of when a figure can be said is new at retail. Now, Entertainment Earth doesn't follow the planogram needs for retail, so it was easy to sort of wedge in an item that could be sold directly to consumers. Getting an item sold into retail takes years. The reason that we didn't have sail barge figures at retail at the same time was, well, Hasbro wasn't sure if this was going to work. I mean, doing a giant $500 vehicle sold online was basically a science experiment. It wasn't something that had been well done by Hasbro before. Other companies had obviously tiptoed in this garden. Looking at you, Mattel, with that Castle Grayskull for Matty Collector. Oh, did I work on that? Yeah, but even the Matty Collector items done about 10 years before the sail barge in this same selling method didn't always go through. I'm looking at you, Ecto-1 car. Yep, so just because you offer a giant item for sale online to fans doesn't mean it's going to be purchased. And believe me, when I was at Mattel, we worked really hard to try to sell in the Ecto-1, and unfortunately, it didn't happen. Hasbro has had this exact same thing happen with Haslab, where some of their items, like the Sentinel or Galactus, have done above and beyond the minimum MOQ that was required to go into production, but they've also had their fair share of items that haven't done this. In fact, we're getting to the point that there's more items that haven't made it on Haslab than have. We haven't exactly turned that corner yet, but between things like the Wheels of Vengeance falling short, or things like, Cookie Monster, and there was the Third Sister lightsaber, having an army of Jabba Palace aliens to fill out the sail barge then at retail at the time was a huge risk, because most of these figures had already been bought. And if you're reissuing a figure that's already been purchased, you risk peg warming. You have to have a real compelling reason to reissue a figure. Doing a second run is almost like, dead man walking, because you're dealing with a portion of the population that already owns the figure. Now, obviously, fans wanted to fill their barge with way more than the 2 characters that came, and the barge provided a reason to reissue figures, much like Wave 2 of Masters of the Universe Origins, which only shipped to Europe. Because of that, there was a rationale to reissue them in the US. Likewise, the Sail Barge created a rationale to reissue Sail Barge characters. Otherwise, you're getting that. So we are getting Sail Barge characters now recreated or re-released and being sent to retail. Why is this? Why are we getting them now and not when the Sail Barge shipped? Well, it's exactly as I spelled out. At the time of the Sail Barge being offered, no one knew if it was actually going to hit. So you didn't want to risk reproducing Jabba Sail Barge aliens, skiff aliens, whatever you want to call them, if there was no reason to rebuy them, because a lot of fans already had them. The Sail Barge created a reason to reissue them, but because at the time it wasn't sure if the Sail Barge was going to ship or not, it really took until the process was complete for Hasbro to say, okay, now we can justify re-releasing some of the figures. But this takes a 3-year process. So the figures that we're seeing that are starting to show up now are essentially carefully balanced to get to retail at a time where retail is open to new figures. They weren't just going to take figures at the time of the Sail Barge, because though that retail plan was set 3 years prior to that. Everything at retail is very much stacked and balanced. You can't just jam something into a retail aisle. It takes time. It takes about 3 years from concept to shelf, which is exactly why we're now, for the first time, seeing a re-release of Star Wars action figure characters appropriate for the Sail Barge years after the barge has actually been released, because we're finally now caught up to that cycle. I hope this explained the lack of figures available at the time the Sail Barge shipped. If more information is needed, let me know. And the best way to support this channel, of course, is to share videos, subscribe, all of that. But I'm always happy to clarify in the comments section, and let me know if there's any remaining questions. Thanks for watching, thanks for sharing, and I'll see you in the next one.